Okay, welcome everybody. So this topic is about Nishmas. Nishmas is a popular prayer. But what I mean popular is that of late there's been a minhag of people saying Nishmas for 40 days in a row in order to merit a Yeshua. And there's some halachic controversy about that minhag. Nishmas is famously part of our pesukei dezimra of Shabbos. And Nishmas is also mentioned as the conclusion of the Pesach Seder, and it's called Birchas Shir. And if a lot of people have a strong connection to this prayer, and being that it's Teves time, and I did some research into it, I thought I would share with you some of these ideas. And I think we've been, through Nishmas, we're going to discuss pesukei dezimra and Hallel and Jewish history, and I think it's going to be very interesting. But let's begin with something, I guess, a little on the light side, and that is this.
No sound?
I don't know if sound is coming through, but I'm going to explain in a second.
Yeah, there's no sound.
Okay, so I'll stop because I guess the sound is not coming through. But basically what that is a popular song by Motzi Weiss, which the words of this song is Ekod al api api api, which means I will bow down on my face, ve'efrois lecho kapi kapi kapi, and I will spread out my palms, eis ki eftach pi, at the time when I open my mouth, b'nishmas kol chai, with the prayer of Nishmas Kol Chai. So this is, again, for people who know, this is actually the last stanza of a song called Libi Ubsori, which is by some people sang on Friday nights. It's found in some of the benchers. It's composed by Ibn Ezra, okay? But originally, even though now people sing it Friday night, but originally it was published as a Reshus Lenishmas. So there was a whole genre of poems that were known as Reshus Lenishmas. Reshus Lenishmas means an introduction, a permission to say Nishmas, meaning Nishmas was considered such a powerful prayer that many other Paitonim poets of Jewish history, the greatest of all time, like the Ibn Ezra, Rabbi Yehudah Halevi, Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gabirol, right? So I have here a list, again, I don't know if you could see it, but there's a list of 4 major Reshus Lenishmas by the greatest of the Paitonim. And again, Reshus means a permission, an introduction to Nishmas Kol Chai. And many communities used to have a minhag that for different Yomim Tovim, for different holidays, they would sing a special introductory poem that was connected specifically to that holiday as an introduction to Nishmas. So Nishmas was so powerful and so important and so impressive that the greatest poets of our Jewish history composed introductory poems to them. Okay, so why is that? I mean, what's the big deal about Nishmas that makes it so wonderful? I mean, it's a prayer. It's powerful. It's beautiful. It talks about our immense gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all the things that He does to us. But I mean, so do other prayers. Many other prayers do that as well, right? So what's unique about this particular prayer that makes it so special, right? That the poets compose introductory poems, that it's a conclusion to our Pesach Seder, right? And it's called Birchas Shir, the blessing of a song, whatever that means. It's even hard to translate. Birchas Shir, the blessing of a song. And that, again, that we also say it as a conclusion of our pesukei dezimra, of Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, so that's the topic for today. And as you see over here, so as Rabbi Schneider shared this with me some time ago, this is a screenshot from a siddur from Shaul Wahl, right? Again, just want to make sure that just in case people don't know, who is Shaul Wahl? Shaul Wahl was the grandson of Maharam Padua, of Mayor of Padua, whose name was Reb Meir Katzenellenbogen. Katzenellenbogen, and anybody who's been to Har Nof knows there's like a street, Rehov Katzenellenbogen. So it's like the prototypical Ashkenazi name, and it belongs to somebody by the name of Maharam Padua, the Rav Mayor of the city of Padua in Venice, and his son was Shmuel Yehudah Katzenellenbogen, who was also the Rabbi of Padua after his father was Niftar. And the famous legend goes that a certain Nicholas or Nikolai Radzivil, who was for his sins, was forced to go to take a pilgrimage to Yerushalayim. On the way back, he stopped in Ancona, and in Ancona he was robbed, and he had no money, and he went from door to door, and he was saying, I'm a prince. If you help me out, I will repay you greatly. And everybody looked at him like a Nigerian prince who sends you an email asking for money, and everybody disregarded him until he came to the Rav of Padua of Shmuel Yehudah Katzenellenbogen, and he didn't care whether there was a prince announced, but the story goes that he welcomed him, provided him with food and money to get back home, and that's what happened. And then later, when his only son, Shaul, was in Poland, he had a letter, I guess, from his father, and he met with this prince, and the prince established him, and this Shaul Wahl became a very, very powerful and very wealthy merchant in Poland. So the fact that he was a wealthy merchant in Poland, that's a fact. I mean, here's a siddur from, handwritten, beautiful siddur from Shaul Wahl. There's a Sefer Torah. Over here. Again, you could, I'm not going to turn on the video because I guess the sound doesn't come through, but there's a tiny, minute Sefer Torah, which is, also, belonged to Shaul Wahl. So he was a powerful figure in Polish economy. And the story goes that in 1586, when Stephen Bathory died, and they couldn't find a replacement for him because he had no kids. So, and the law of the Polish law was, and it's Polish really, that everybody, it had to be unanimous for the king to become king. All the nobles had to agree, had to be complete consensus. Since they couldn't come to agreement, and they had a law that they couldn't have a day go by without a king, so they basically nominated this Reb Shaul Wahl to be a king for a day. Right? So again, you could look this up. So he was a king for a day, supposedly on August 18th, 1587. Whether, again, this story is true or not, there's no real historic record as far as I know that he was indeed king for a day. So it's a little dubious, but that's the idea. That's Rav Shaul Wahl was this person, was a wealthy Jew. And again, so this is his siddur, this is his Nishmas, a beautiful ornate Nishmas. And in the corner where this square is located, it says, hold on, let me just move this out of the way. It says, Rabbi Shimon ben Kippah Yisdoi. I don't know if you could see the letters in the corner of the screen. Rabbi Shimon ben Kippah Yisdoi. Who is Rabbi Shimon ben Kippah? Right? The Simon ben Kippah. Kippah is like a sure, a rock. Again, I'm going to skip here. So here's a hold on again. I'm sorry. Here's this is from a Sefer and Haggadah. Nishmas. It says Matzasi Kosov. I found written Besidur al Klaf B'Shnas Kuf Samach Vav B'Zelu Shoynai. I found this on the Siddur. Shemati Rabbeinu Yehudah Bar Yaakov. I've heard from Rabbeinu Yehudah Bar Yaakov. So in other words, this is from the early Rishonim. Rabbi Shimon ben Kippah Yosad Nishmas. That Rabbi Shimon ben Kippah was the one who wrote this prayer called Nishmas. Admi Yid Meloch V'Ruach Kol Basor. Again, I'm just going to skip a little bit. Ulefi sheB'Shabbos yesh neshama yiseira. Since on Shabbos there is a neshama yiseira. Lekach maskirim shneim. So that's why we say Nishmas Kol Chai to reflect the fact that on Shabbos we give neshama yiseir. So again, we'll see in a second that there are opinions who say that Nishmas can only be recited on Shabbos. Okay, and we'll see that in a second. Ubesider Heretz Kosav b'Shem Rekeach, and Rekeach is going to come back again. In the name of Rekeach, Matzasi Shimon ben Kippah Yostoi. Again, there are those that say it's not Shimon ben Kippah, it's Shimon ben Shetach. But everybody agrees that it's some sort of a Shimon that wrote Nishmas. Why? Because the ending of Nishmas spell out the name Shimon. It's from the word Shoichen Ad, then Mi Yidmelach, then Adheina. From again, if you see, I don't know if you can see it clearly on the screen, but I bolded the letters that the end of Nishmas spell out the name Shimon. So we have two options. It could be Shimon ben Kippah. We'll say in a second who that is, or Shimon ben Shetach. Machzer Vitri. Okay, again, Machzer Vitri. This is a Machzer that talks about the laws and the minhagim of davening. And it says, talks about how on pesukei dezimra of Shabbos, v'choisem b'nishmas kol chai, that we conclude with nishmas kol chai. This Nishmas Kol Chai Hi Birchas Shir. Again, Nishmas Kol Chai is the blessing of Shir, which I think it means over here it's like a conclusion of songs. V'yeshu Oimrim Al Oisoi Novel. That there are those that say that it's named after, that it follows after that novel, that pervert, Shimon Peter Chamor. Shimon, that they call Peter Chamor. Peter Chamor is when you break a donkey's neck, right? So they call this Shimon Peter Chamor. So so let's just clarify who that is. So according to legend, so this picture over here, as you can see, is somebody by the name of Saint Peter. Saint Peter was one of the early apostles of Jesus, and supposedly this legend goes that he was really a righteous Jew who supposedly led Jews, those Jews that follow Christianity, he led them away and separated them from Judaism. And so he himself was a hermit for most of his life, and that's why he's called Shimon Kippah, that he was locked up in a certain monastery or a certain tower. But really the whole time, he was meditating on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he was really a righteous Jew. And his name was Shimon. Later, he was called Peter. It's not clear why he was called Peter, but Peter may also have something to do with some rock. And so he is the original author of Nishmas Kol Chai. He's the Shimon Kippah, Shimon ben Kippah. He's the one that wrote this beautiful prayer. However, Machzer Vitri says, continuing this, he says, "V'chas v'sholom, shloi tiyeh zois b'Yisrael, chas v'sholom." You could say such a thing in Israel. V'kol ha'omer do v'zer, and somebody who says such a thing, k'shibona beis hamikdash yovi chatas shmeina. Somebody who says such a thing, when the beis hamikdash will be rebuilt, he will have to bring a chatas, a sin offering, right? So we have two different traditions from the times of the Balei Tosfos, right? From the times of the early Ashkenaz, whether or not this prayer was composed by Saint Peter himself. And not only that, they're very, not only they're just like, okay, here's a tradition, it's tradition. One says that this is a sin to say such a thing. Again, here's just another beautiful version of Nishmas from a Venice Machzer of 1599. Okay, this is the early printed versions of these letters. Okay, one second. So one thing that I'm going to mention is why am I giving this here particularly now, is because so Asara B'Teves is coming up, the 10th of Teves is coming up, and 10th of Teves we know is a fast day. But the Gemara says that really there were supposed to be 3 fast days: the 8th of Teves, the 9th of Teves, and the 10th of Teves, and just we couldn't fast all 3, so we ended up with the 10th of Teves. The Gemara says. The Shulchan Aruch brings it out. The 8th of Teves was supposed to be a fast day because the Torah was translated into Greek, right? That's the translation of 70, which is known as the Septuagint, right? That was when the Torah was translated into Greek by those 70 scholars. Even though it was a big miracle and there was a certain Kiddush Hashem, at the same time, the Gemara says that the world became dark. Then the Tur says that on the 9th of Teves is also some kind of tragedy, but we don't have a tradition of what that tragedy was. And finally, the 10th of Teves, we know what it is. That's the surrounding of Yerushalayim and related to the rest of the fasts. So what happened on the 9th of Teves that the Tur was not able to write it down? So there's a tradition that exists, and the 9th of Teves was actually the yahrzeit, the day of death of this Shimon Kippur, of this Saint Peter. And that he was such a great tzaddik, and his death was so significant that the day of his death was supposed to be a fast day. Okay, and some people have this tradition, and they do follow this. But again, according to the Machzor Vitri, if you would say such a thing, you would follow, and you fast on such a day, it would be again a great sin. But again, I'm just apropos to this time, I thought it would be nice to talk about this. Now really begins the actual journey of this Nishmas that I want to discuss, and again it relates to this minhag of saying Nishmas on a daily basis, as a way to uplift our souls. And again, I'm not going to come to criticize it, although I'm actually going to in the end come to defend it. But let's first get there. So let me share with you this Gemara. Omar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says in the Gemara Shabbos, he says, Yehei chelki migoimrei Hallel b'chol yom. Let my portion be with those that conclude Hallel on a daily basis. The Gemara says, really? Wow, Hallel on a daily basis? But didn't Mar say, Hakoirei Hallel b'chol yom, that somebody who says Hallel on a daily basis, he's like somebody who curses, right? So Hallel every day would not be a mitzvah, it would be a great sin. It's like somebody who curses God. So Rabbi Yossi responds, when I was talking about pesukei dezimra, I was referring to pesukei dezimra. Okay, so it's very interesting that pesukei dezimra over here in this Gemara is actually called Hallel, the daily Hallel. Pesukei dezimra is a daily Hallel. Rashi explains, and again, I don't have time to go into all of pesukei dezimra. Rashi explains that pesukei dezimra, what is pesukei dezimra? Shnei mizmorim shel hilulim. There are two songs of hilulim, of praises. Hallelu es Hashem min hashemayim, and Hallelu kel b'kodshoy. Okay, so in other words, out of all of the pesukei dezimra that we say on weekday and all of the pesukei dezimra that we say on Shabbos, according to Rashi, the two main ones are the middle Hallelujah, and actually most Rishonim disagree with Rashi. Rashi says two of the Mizmorim, two songs. The most Rishonim say that the pesukei dezimra, the core capital of pesukei dezimra, is the middle of the three Hallelujahs. Is of the five Hallelujahs, right? Is the middle of the five Hallelujahs. Why is that the core? So Rabbeinu Bechai explains that capital goes through how the entire creation of the world of Hashem, the entire creation praises Hashem, starting from Shamayim, the stars of the heavens, then going to the earth and going to the people and the Zikanim, the elderly, and the Neorim and the youth, the kings and the plain people. So the entire creation praises Hashem. So that's the essence of pesukei dezimra, to say that everything that Hashem created is praising Hashem, is turning towards Hashem. Everything else, really, it's amazing. Everything else is either a minhag or an addition, but the core of pesukei dezimra is that hallelujah. And I'm going to come back to this again. We're going to come back to all of this and tie it all together. Anyways, Meiri points out why in the world, okay, so if why in the world would it be a problem to say Hallel every day? Hallel, if Hallel is such a beautiful prayer, right? Why can't we say it every day? Why is it that it's harezek? I mean, maybe it's not a good idea to say it, but why is it mecharef megadef? Why is it like somebody who curses? So Meiri explains, the reason is, when a person says this Hallel every day, and he doesn't say it with the same taste, right? Eina margish, he doesn't feel to be moved by it. On those days that he was supposed to say it, to say thanks on the miracles. Okay, so in other words, when you take something that's extremely beautiful and something that's rare and you make it a daily activity, you take away all of its oomph, you take away all of its amazing power. So it's like mecharef hagadol, if you remove the full power of this Hallel, right? So therefore saying Hallel every day would be a sin. So, but pesukei dezimra, it's not a sin. But then we got to know what's the difference between pesukei dezimra that we say every day and Hallel, which we say only on special days, which is to thank, like Hanukkah, right? When we have miracles. Okay, so we're going to come back to that question. Meanwhile, just one of Ben Ish Chai says that the reason why we say Nishmas Kol Chai, again, this is beautiful words and it's more Kabbalistic, but I just wanted to share. The reason why we say Nishmas Kol Chai on Shabbos, he says like this. He says that on Shabbos we have a Neshama Yisera, we have a Teisefes Shel Neiron. Neiron is Nefesh Ruach Neshama. So on Friday night, when we say again, this is from a different piece. When he says when we say that Hashem spreads over us his sukkah, his tent of peace, that's when we accept the neshama of Shabbos night. But he says ve'atar nevayer. But now we're going to explain how you accept the extra neshama of the day, which are even greater and more powerful than the ones from the night. And he says, that occurs when a person says the words Nishmas Kol Chai. A person should have kavana. A person has to think that when he says Nishmas Kol Chai in the morning, that's when he's accepting upon himself the extra neshama of Shabbos day. Again, he explains this with Rosh Tevis with the letters of Nun, Kof, and Ches, right? The beginning letters of Nishmas Kol Chai. Oile Mispar Shloishes Havayos is the gematria is 78, which equals 3 times Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? The Hashem's name, which is again parallel to the 3 neshamas that are extra that are received on Shabbos morning. Again, he brings other kavanas over here. But again, we're not getting into it. He says another interesting thing, and this maybe applies to us in the Young Israel, and that he says his Rav David Pardo in Michtav LeDavid writes that somebody who says Shema on Shabbos and he doesn't say Nishmas Kol Chai before that, right? Because he says that Neshama Yisera, the reason why we don't wear tefillin on Shabbos is because the Gemara says that Shabbos is called an ois, which is a sign, and tefillin is called a sign. So we don't need a sign on top of a sign. But he says that the sign of Shabbos comes with the Neshama Yisera. So in other words, the Neshama Yisera is like a replacement for tefillin. And when does the Neshama Yisera come? The Neshama Yisera comes when you say Nishmas Kol Chai. And if you don't say Nishmas Kol Chai and you say Shema without Nishmas Kol Chai, it's similar a little bit as if a person is not wearing tefillin and saying Shema, which again, the Gemara says is inappropriate. You have to wear tefillin to say Shema so that your testimony is considered more precise, because your Shema is your tefillin is your testimony that Hashem Echad, and and when your words are Hashem Echad. So similarly, he says Nishmas Kol Chai functions in a similar vein. So again, for us, by the time we get to Nishmas Kol Chai, the Zman of Kriya Shema is long gone. But moving on. But here's coming back to the issue of whether or not you can say Nishmas on a daily basis. So again, this also comes from Rav David Pardo, from Michtav LeDavid. He says, Avaloimer Nishmas Acharat Tefillah. He says, if you're going to say Nishmas daily after Tefillah, this is not like we do, meaning like some people do, where they say it for 40 days in order to get a Yeshua. He's talking about people saying Nishmas on a daily basis, as opposed to just Shabbos and Yom Tov. He says it's also similar a little bit to that story of Hallel, the Amrinan that we say, Hakoire Hallel b'chol yom, somebody who says Hallel on a daily basis, is like a cursor. It says V'seder Nishmas zeh, this prayer Nishmas yesh bo ktsas dimyon laHallel. It has a little bit of similarity to Hallel. In other words, it's so special and so powerful to say it on a daily basis. Is inappropriate. You can't say this, it's not something that you can say on a daily basis. That is what this Michtav L'David says. He says it's not appropriate to say this Hallel on this Nishmas Kol Chai, such a special prayer, to say it on a daily basis takes away from its specialness. However, and this I found from certain scholars, this is quite interesting. And from here we're going to travel, again, this is part of our journey, we're going to travel back to Ashkenaz, to Chasidei Ashkenaz, from somebody, but the famous Rabbi Lezer Akeach. Rabbi Lezer Akeach is considered to be one of the superstars of Chasidei Ashkenaz. Chasidei Ashkenaz was a certain time period, again, was part of the Tosafist tradition, but they were the German Tosafist tradition, which were very ascetic. They were even more ascetic. Besides being scholars, they were also ascetics. Ascetics meaning that they kept very strong stringencies with regards to many practices. And Rekeach is famous as being a makubal, as somebody who wrote a lot of gematrias that are from him. I mean, he's considered to be, like I said, a superstar. So sadly, his wife, whose name was Dulcia, which I think means sweet, Dulcia, la dolce vita, right? La Dulcia. His wife Dulcia was actually probably a money changer, a businesswoman, and she supported him in learning. And unfortunately, the story goes again. It's not clear what the story fully is, but unfortunately, their house was attacked by possibly by crusaders. Again, it's not clear who the attackers were, but the attackers attacked the house. They beat up this Rebbe Lezer Akeach, they smashed him on his head, and they pushed him out of the house. And before he could do anything, they killed his wife. They killed his wife, Dulcia. And he was completely, he survived, but he was completely shaken by it. And then when he buried her, he composed a kina, right? This eulogy in the form of a song, and it's an Seder Aleph base, like an Eishes Chayil type of a song. And I'm not gonna, it's very long, but in the middle of that song, he says, this is what he says about her. He says, Mishereres Zmirois Utfila Umedaberes Tachanunim. She was somebody who sang songs and prayers and spoke Tachanunim, right? Supplications. Vidui B'chol Yoim. She said Vidui, right? Every day she did the, how do you say Vidui? Okay, Vidui B'chol Yoim, a confession, right? Nishmas Kol Chai. To Nishmas Kol Chai. V'chol ma'aminim, and then she also said the capital V'chol ma'aminim, which we say in Ashkenaz, we say only on the high holidays, and he says Na'emas Pitum HaKetoros, that she would also say Pitum HaKetoros, the Ketoros V'aseres Advarim, right, in the 10 Commandments, right, and she taught other women to do like that. Okay, so this is part of the song that this Rabbi Lezer Akeach, the superstar of Chasidei Ashkenaz, wrote about his wife, which seems to imply that this is what she did on a daily basis. Okay, again, it's not clear, this lamed, maybe it's Nishmas Kol Chai, maybe it's Nishmas Kol Chai, there's some discussion about that, but it seems to indicate that she said these things on a daily basis, that Nishmas Kol Chai is not unlike this Michtav L'David of David Pardo, who was an early or Achron, from the Rishonim, that seems to be that there is a tradition that Nishmas could be said on a daily basis. Okay, now let's come back for a second to pesukei dezimra. In pesukei dezimra, I said before from the Gemara that the key part of pesukei dezimra is the middle halaluka, the middle halaluka. However, we also say famously Ashrei, what we call Ashrei, what the Gemara says Tila LeDavid, right? But why do we say that in pesukei dezimra? Because of the famous Gemara says, Omer Rabbi Loza, Omer Rabbi Avina, and this Gemara in Brachas, Kol ha'omer Tila LeDavid b'chol yoim sholosh pa'amim, somebody who says Tila LeDavid, in other words, Ashrei, 3 times every day, Muftach lo yeshehu b'nolam haba, he's guaranteed a place in the world to come. So the Gemara says, my timer, what's the reason? Ilema mishum de asya ba'alev beis. If the reason is because it's composed on the Seder of Aleph Beis, so name Ashri Tmimi Derech. Let us say the capital of 119, which has 8, the Asya Bitmania, that comes with 8 Aleph bases, right? I mean, thank God they didn't. This was not the conclusion of the Gemara, right? Although many of the Tehillim groups, I think Gurion says a Kufi test these days every day. But in any case, but it would be a great thing to say it every day because it has 8 Aleph bases. But we say no. Maybe if it's perhaps maybe because it has the words Pesach es yodecha, that Hashem opens His hand to give us daily sustenance. So then the Gemara says, Nema Hallel hagadol. Then we should say something called Hallel hagadol. What's Hallel hagadol? Hallel hagadol is, again, also the thing that we say on Shabbos and pesukei dezimra. It's the capital of Tehillim that has 26 kilo olam chasidei, which is called the Hallel hagadol, the great Hallel. It also concludes the end of that great Hallel, Diksiv beinoisein lechem lechol basar, that Hashem gives bread to all flesh. So we see that, right? So there are 2 possible candidates, but the Gemara says, Elam mishum deis beitarti. No, Ashrei is the best candidate because it has both. It has Aleph Beis and it has Pesach es yodecha. So in other words, it has Parnasa and it has Aleph Beis. Okay, I mean, it's nice. Again, it's nice that it has both of those things. Why does that make it so important that if you say this Ashrei every day, 3 times a day, you move tachloi, you're guaranteed an olam haba. But because of this Gemara, right? Because of this Gemara, those that were designing our prayers, they included Ashrei into pesukei dezimra. Okay, so it became part of it because it has something that is good for you to say it every day, right? It's another example of something that you should say every day, unlike the other things that we mentioned that you cannot say every day. Okay, so this is my Harsha. This is already too much. I'm going to skip that. That's my Harsha's shot. Again, I'm not sure if I go into this. This is from Rav Kook's Sefer, where he describes what exactly is prayer, right? What exactly is prayer? But just to sum it up, just he's saying that prayer is the yearning of the soul to break free from its bonds of the physical body, right? That's the essence of prayer, is the spiritual kind of yearning to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to break free from the bonds of the limitations of this physical world. That's what prayer is. Prayer is supposed to be an opportunity for us to completely kind of like sing. It's what a song is. It's supposed to break through the boundaries of this limitation. Okay, so now let's put it all together. So here's what we have. We have Tila LeDavid, which is Ashrei. You should say it 3 times a day because the Gemara says it's Parnasa and Aleph Beis. We have pesukei dezimra, which is what is called the daily Hallel, right? Which is similar to Tila LeDavid, and I'm going to explain in a second. That again, because over there also, like I said before, that the main capital, which is the middle capital, talks about how the universe, the workings of the heavens and the workings of the earth, like the clockwork of the universe, it runs and it praises Hashem. So it also is, again, supposed to be said daily. Why? Again, I hope you're starting to see the point that it speaks about the regular daily what's the word function, the daily mahalach, the daily routine of the universe that Hashem created, the nature that Hashem put in place, the clockwork of the creation. That's the point of that praise. And then we have 2 other Hallels. We have what's called Hallel Mitzrayim. The one that we just said by Chanukah is called Hallel Mitzrayim. That speaks about miracles that Hashem did for us in Egypt by taking us out of Egypt, right? So over here, nature is overridden, right? There are 2 elements for us to say Hallel. The Aiming Bracha says that they need 2 elements to say Hallel. One is that it has to be a salvation of the Jewish people, and the other is that it has to be miraculous salvation, right? There has to be greatness, and there has to be kindness. The greatness is through miracles, and the kindness is through salvation. So Hallel Mitzrayim you can't say every day. because the Meiri says, it cheapens this unique nature of this special Hallel. And then we have the hagadol. Hagadol begins with the nature. Hashem created the world, then goes into Mitzrayim, goes into our exodus of Mitzrayim in Egypt, and then concludes the last stanza, before just the conclusion, praise Hashem, is Parnasa. So it sounds from Hagadol, maybe that's the key to this all, that Hagadol concludes with Parnasa, with sustenance, daily bread that Hashem provides for each one of us. So in other words, we've all heard this idea, but it's a very fundamental idea that really all of nature is a miracle. All of nature is one big miracle. And when we see a miracle which is supernatural, the whole point of a supernatural miracle is for us to remember that even the nature is miraculous, is to see and appreciate when we wake up in the morning, to see that, wow, this world exists, it has no reason to exist. And wow, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes care and provides for us with our daily bread and our daily needs, right? Parnasa is a symbol of our continued relationship with Hashem on a daily basis, right? So that's the ikr, that's the thing that we say every day. On occasion, we need to say Hallel Mitzrayim, we need to say the big Hallel on occasion, in order to remind us that there is a I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I got lost. Hold on. Pardon. Right. So on occasion, we need a reminder that Hashem runs the whole world, and that every minute, every moment of nature is miraculous, right? So the highest level of praise is to take the Hallel that we just said by Chanukah, that beautiful song that pierces through kind of when we appreciate what Hashem does for us, that those unique miracles, and you take that same energy and you find it in your daily life. That's the goal, right? That's the goal of all of this. Right? And that's why Hagadol is called Hagadol, because it combines these two ideas. It takes the Hallel of Mitzrayim, the miracles of Mitzrayim, and the miracles of creation, and then concludes with Parnasa. Parnasa symbolizes this idea that Hashem within nature provides for us on a daily basis our needs. Right? So that's why that's the ultimate praise. And that's why Ashrei is also so special, because it combines these two ideas. The idea is that Aleph Beis represents that natural sequential order of things. It's in order, Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, right? It's a sequence. There's a Seder, it's the natural order of things. And it also has Pesach Chasidei, it also has that Hashem provides our sustenance. Those two things, the nature of the universe, together with Parnasa, that is the ultimate Tila L'Dovid, that if you say it every day and you appreciate that in every aspect of the natural world, and every time Hashem provides for you, it's a direct contact, it's a direct relationship. That's why it's Muftach of Olam Haba. That's why you're guaranteed a passage to Olam Haba. Okay, so now coming back to Nishmas, we took a long detour, but now maybe we can understand actually where Nishmas comes in. Nishmas, this is my thesis here, I would like to say that Nishmas begins where Tehillim ends. Okay? Nishmas begins where Tehillim ends. What do I mean by that? I mean, what is the last phrase of Tehillim? The last phrase of Tehillim is Kol HaNeshama Tehalal Kol. Right? Every single neshama praises Hashem. Right? Every single neshama praises Hashem. What does Nishmas start with? Nishmas start with Nishmas Kol Chai, the neshamas of all living things, right? So Nishmas begins where Tehillim ends. And what does that mean? What does that mean? That means like this. So Tehillim contains in it the three Hallels that we just spoke about. Tehillim is the sum total of all praises. The sum total of all praises that Klal Yisrael, right? David the Melech is like the mouth of Klal Yisrael. He speaks all of the praises of Klal Yisrael through different experiences are all recorded in the 150 capitals of Tehillim. And Tehillim contains all the three Hallels, the Hallel hagadol, the Hallel Mitzrayim, and the daily Hallel called pesukei dezimra. All of those Hallels are contained in Tehillim, right? Now, what Nishmas does is, Nishmas takes whatever Tehillim you say, this is my part of my thesis, is that Nishmas is like the ultimate steering wheel, power steering. It takes whatever ideas you say, right? If you look at the words of Nishmas, if you go back and look at the words of Nishmas, the idea of Nishmas is you take this ocean of emotion that's bursting through your words of Tehillim, of whatever it is, right? And you say, wow, no matter what I do, right? If my mouth would be open, if my mouth would be as large as the ocean, right? If my tongue would be full of praise as the waves, and etc. It has these multiplicatory ideas where no matter how great I would have been, no matter how limitless I would have been, I still would not be able to express all of the appreciation and the thanks and the praises that Hashem, deserves and gives because of the chesed that He gives me. So in other words, the sum total of Tehillim is kol neshama talakol, right? In other words, the summation of all the praises, every living neshama sings praises of Hashem. And Nishmas takes that idea and kind of opens it up and says, and no matter how much all of our neshamas are singing, and no matter what capacities and what agency and what talents Hashem would have given us, it would never be enough, right? So in other words, what I'm saying is that what I think Nishmas does is it takes whatever you said before and it multiplies it. It like says, take whatever I said until now and until infinity. Because it's never going to be enough. And that's why it's called Birchas Shir. That's why it comes in conclusion of Hallel of Yitzias Mitzrayim, because it's the conclusion to all praise. It's not the beginning of praise, it's a conclusion to all praise, because it's saying that that all of these neshamas, all of our neshamas are praising Hashem way beyond what we could possibly praise, and it continues to praise. Okay, so again, I'm just going to read some of these. This is the key phrases over here, right? If our mouths were full of song like the sea, right? Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing because you guys are probably familiar with it, but right, we still would not be we would not be sufficient to say thanks to you, Hashem Elokeinu, right, and to bless your name thousands and tens of thousands of times that you did good for us and to our forefathers, right? And then again, I'm just going to skip further towards the end of the Nishmas where it says, right, and we would your name is praised, and different languages of praise. I'll call divrei shiros v'sishbochos David ben Yishai v'decha mishichecha, that your praise is greater on top of all the praises and songs of David ben Yishai, your servant. Right, so you see that Nishmas concludes with this idea that no matter what David HaMelech's great praises were, they're still not enough. Meaning, we can praise you forever again, and that's the idea of Nishmas. The idea of Nishmas is to highlight that feeling of an infinitesimality that we have before Hashem and how much appreciation we have. So again, I could see now on one hand, I could see that it's not something that you might want to say every day because you might lose that flavor. On the other hand, again, I think if you say it with that idea, with appreciation of Hashem in everyday life, and especially if you say it first with some Tehillim, and then you say as a conclusion of your Tehillim, Nishmas, which multiplies your Tehillim from before, so then it functions kind of in a similar way as it does on Shabbos. Okay, so that's my main thesis, and I hope you appreciated it. Now, I just want to, I want to share with you just very beautiful two different poems as Rishus Nishmas. The poem on the right is written by Rabbi Yehudah Halevi, It's a Reshus Nishmas. Again, it's an introduction to Nishmas. And the point on the poem on the left is written by Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gabirol. Right? These are the two of the greatest paitonim of Sephardic, of Spanish Jewry. Right? But I just want to show you how they both are introducing Nishmas, right? They're both introducing this great prayer. And yet you see how I think, each individual, the two kind of extremes of personalities are shining through these poems. Okay? So let's start with the poem on the right. Again, I'm not going to do justice to it by translating it, but it says the poet here, Rabbi Yehudah Halevi, speaks about his soul. And he says, Yeshena b'cheik yaldus, l'masaitish kevi. My soul who sleeps in my youth. How long can you sleep? You got to wake up. You think your youth is going to be forever? Kumitzi, get out and run. Right? See that your old age is going to catch up with you. Vihisnari, and wake up. Minazman ketziparim, from the time, meaning from the laziness of time, like a bird. Hashem resisei laila yisnaru, which wake up and sing from the dreams of sleep. If you're going to be like a swallow who sees freedom, right? Umitoldis yomim kayomim yisaru, hayi acharei malkeif meradefas besoid nishamis asher eltuva adoinoi naharu. And basically saying, wake up my soul and run after Hashem. You're sleeping, you're slumbering, you're fly like an eagle, so to speak, and seek freedom, burst forth. Okay, that's one flavor, right? It's a flavor of get out there, carpe diem type of a flavor. Okay, here's another flavor. This is from Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gabirol. Rabbi Shlomo Ibn Gabirol says, Shval ruach, lowly of spirit, Shval berach v'koima, lowly of knee and stature, akademcha b'roiv pachad v'ema. How can I, come to you with so much fear and trepidation? Lefanecha ani nechshav be'enai, before you, when I stand before you, Hashem, I consider myself k'teilas k'tana be'adama, like a small worm in the ground. Malay Oilam, the one who fills the whole world, Asher Enkates Lagadloi, there's no end to his greatness. Hakamoini Ubama. How can someone like me can even begin to praise you? Right? Right? Your greatness is not filled by the angels. So how much more so can I possibly say any praises to you? Ashachir El Bereshis Rayanai. Again, so I'll just hope in the beginning of my thoughts that to you all neshamas praise, right? So again, he's introducing Nishmas with kol neshama. But the point is I just want to show you the complete contrast of one Rabbi Yehudah Halevi who says, get out there and run after Hashem and sing Hashem and stop sleeping and wake up and to the greatness of Hashem, and the other one who says, you're nothing, you're a little warm, and you just fear and trepidation before the greatness of God. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. These are just we know that they're just these two very different personality types, I guess you could say, in two different ways to approach the divine. And I just thought it was very beautiful how these two poems, which are introductions to this great poem of Nishmas, highlight these two very different ways of approaching the divine. Okay, I appreciate everybody for listening. I hope